over a longer period of time without burning out, without overwhelm, without working super, super hard. That's what we're breaking down in today's video. If you're brand new to me, my name is Susan McVeigh, and I am a married mama of two and a business sales and wealth strategist. And on this channel, we talk about all things entrepreneurship, which includes business and sales, money, with some faith and family thrown in the mix because hashtag real life. So if you're watching live or on the replay, please feel free to say hello and let me know where you're watching from. We're going to keep this one fairly short because it's already quite late where I am in the world. And if you are on here on the replay, please feel free to add in your questions below and suggestions for future topics, and I may pick those up and run with them for upcoming lives. So there's three things that I want to talk about today as it relates to sustainable success. And I know that sometimes we think that there's like some one big magical secret. And what I want you to know before I even get into these three things that I think will hopefully be like guiding principles that might help you is there is no one secret. Now, I've done it too, where I use the secret to success or the secret to that. And while it may be helpful in order to paint a picture or to attract the right people using that kind of language, I also want you to just be aware that when people are saying things like that and it makes you feel a certain way, just notice and pay attention, because you get to define success based off of what is most important to you. And that's going to lead directly into point number one. But before we get into that, the reason why I bring this up is because I think sometimes we feel like we're chasing after the secrets of success or the secret to insert your result of choice. And then we come to it from a place of lack, from a place of I'm missing something, from a place of there's something wrong with me. And as a result, there's something that I'm not doing right. And in this video and in all of my videos, I really want to help you understand that there is nothing wrong with you. In fact, chances are you're probably a high achiever who is highly driven, highly motivated, and used to achieving and accomplishing at a high, high level. And as a result, sometimes because you are constantly looking for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, that it can be a little bit challenging and difficult to recognize how far you've come and how much you've done, and not always appreciate the journey when you look back. And so every step of the way, I want you to give yourself an opportunity to redefine what success means and what it looks like for you. So the three things that I want to talk about today. Number one is I want you to align your definition of success, and how you're going to achieve that sustainably is going to depend on your values, your vision, and your purpose. And so what does that look like? Well, your values are the things that when everything else is removed, those are the things that are your tried and true, like for you. And that's why it's highly personal, right? So to take somebody else's definition of success and then to try to embody them for yourself and to follow the pathway that they achieved, you may find that there is cognitive dissonance, which essentially means that what you desire and what you actually are taking actions on, that there's a disconnect. And oftentimes that happens because there is an incongruence between how we're going to achieve those goals and the outcomes that we desire and the pathway with what it is that we actually desire, which is embedded deeply within our psyche and our values. Right? So when there is a disconnect, so I'll give you a live example of how this might look. Let's say that you want to be successful, you want to have a certain amount of wealth or income, live a certain lifestyle, and as a result, you've taken on a job, whether it's a business or in your own career. And once you get into it, you realize, oh my goodness, this company does not have the same values as I do. Like, on paper, they say they do, but the way that they treat their staff or the things that they're encouraging, maybe it's working really, really late hours. Like you should be the first and you should be the last out. And that is completely at odds. Hello, Be God. That might be completely at odds with your value of freedom or your value of autonomy or your value of flexibility or even your family. Does that make sense? And so if you continue to operate in that job, even though it pays you a lot of money, there's a part of you that's going to be deeply unfulfilled because that definition of success means that you're having to give up something that inherently is much more valuable to you than just a job, than just making a certain amount of money, right? And so this is where, when you look at sustainable success, and I believe that sustainable success does not come with a, you have to choose this or that. You can do both, meaning oftentimes with high performers, high achievers, like the clients that I work with, that it feels like in order for me to keep getting a certain level of result or achievement, that I have to pick and choose one over the other. Like I have to pick the result or my business or my success instead of something else that might be equally, if not more important to me, AKA my health, my family, my long-term sustainable wealth, my impact to the world, those sorts of things, right? So if you identify early on that there is a misalignment, a disconnection that you're going to prevent before it starts to snowball and become an even bigger thing, then chances are you are going to prevent burnout, unfulfillment, and just a lack of connection with the things that you are trying to do and accomplish. This is when the awards, the accolades, the rah of another target that you've achieved or another thing that you've ticked off your list simply becomes yet another thing to do. And it almost becomes a burden. And if you are a high achiever, like so many of my clients, I know that that is disheartening and it can be very confusing because when you are so used to accomplishing and setting big goals and big targets, and then all of a sudden it feels like, well, is that even sustainable? Is that even what I want anymore? And you have to almost reimagine what it is that you now desire. And it is so wrapped up in your identity. And now if that describes you, right, I want you to go and watch. Go and watch some of the earlier live streams that I've done here on YouTube, because I think they might be helpful for you. Be God, I subscribe to your channel. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Let me know where you're from, because I would love to know. Okay, so the very first thing that I want to talk about, which I just mentioned around sustainable success, is aligning, and I'm looking down my notes so that I don't get off track, align with your values, your vision, and your purpose. Okay, so all of that combined means that success is no longer just a surface level thing. And I'm going to tell you, as somebody who has been a goal achiever my whole life, and maybe that's you too, if that's you. So if you are somebody who would consider yourself to be pretty successful, somebody who's goal oriented, put a 1 in the comments for me, just so I know I'm talking to the right people. At a certain point in your life, it becomes, hello, Lisa, Ontario. Oh, amazing. I have a sister who's in Ontario. At some point, it just becomes more stuff, right? Like another award, another achievement, another goal, another year. And I don't want that for any of us, because I believe, now you might have a different belief system, but I believe that life is meant for us to enjoy it while we're here, like not just to go through the motions. Does that make sense? Right? And I know that sometimes, especially if you are a high achieving woman, that the world likes to tell us that you're too much, or you can't have that because it's too much. It's almost like you can't do that because it's too selfish. If you've already achieved a certain level of success, then you can't want more because that's being greedy. And yet we would never say to somebody, oh, you've had your fill. You had your quota on joy. You've had your fill on love. Like, that's too much. Like, and I'm going to tell you, as somebody who has completely shifted from the inside out, that people find you obnoxious when you start to really just step into who you are, whose you are, how you were created, and you do this, where you are redefining success to not just mean another check mark on the box of the long list of stuff that you got to get done in your life or that you desire to get done in your life, but that you are ultimately aligning them with your values, with that vision, and with your purpose. Now, if you don't know what your purpose is, go and watch the video where I talk about purpose in a little bit more detail because it might be helpful for you. Hint, my purpose isn't some like grandiose thing. It's not like super noble. It's helpful, but it's not something that is like, I'm going to save a whole bunch of people's lives, right? However, that doesn't mean that my purpose is less than somebody else's who might have that purpose. And that's why we need to stop looking at what are they doing and focus on what are you called to do? What is your, like, I always butcher this because I live in Canada, but I don't speak a lot of French. So what is your raison d'etre, which is your reason for being, right? Why were you created on the earth? And sometimes we feel like the reason why we're created is not big enough. Says who, right? Says who? I love your videos. Thank you. I appreciate you. Be God. And I don't know if you have a name or you want me to refer to you as your handle, which I'm totally okay with. Hello, Lisa. Oh, Lisa Leggy. Be God says, I live in Canada. Oh, sorry, my eyes are dry. Don't say Marie. Oh, beautiful. Okay. So that's the first thing, right? Because when you align your values, your vision, and your purpose, then your success actually means something to you. It's no longer like, because sometimes, and maybe I'm the only one that's had this. Have you ever gone through life and you realize, it's almost like you wake up one day and you realize, gosh, I don't want that. Like, those are some of the things that my parents wanted for me. When I was younger, my parents wanted me to be a doctor and a lawyer. And for a long time, I wanted those too. But at some point, you got to live life for yourself, right? You got to redefine your life based off of your own criteria for success. And while other people can influence it, if you don't take the time to think about what is my vision, like what do I see for my own life and my own future? What is in my dreams that maybe I have let go of and maybe well-meaning people have said, you can't do that. Well, says who? Because I'm going to tell you that just in the last 6 months or so, because my family, like my grandparents, both my grandpas passed away, my granddads, I didn't know them before I was born, right? And so when I think about aging well, I don't actually have a lot of real life examples in my family history. And so my vision of living a really robust and well-lived life includes a lot of health, partly because I've had my own personal health issues, right? Oh, thank you. It's okay. Braden, amazing. Okay. And if it doesn't work the first time, join it again. I'm not sure I understand, EGT King. So when I started thinking about the vision for my overall life, right? And because now my value includes health, it hasn't always. And because sometimes you take for granted the stuff that it's just there, right? Like I never really had to think about my health until about 15 years ago. And so because of that, now health has to be top of the list for one of my key priorities. It feeds the level of success that I need to have or that I get to have because it has to be built off of a foundation that is stable. For me, that includes my faith, my family, and my health. So when I was trying to look for examples and I really struggled, they just showed up, right? And I started to see stories of amazing older women who had started to train for marathons and to run races in their 80s, like 60s, 70s, 80s. They just started that. So it wasn't like they had done that their entire lifetime, but it was something that they had picked up. I read an article just recently about a super ager. This woman, she lives on her own. She's 102 and she lives in New York. Her husband passed when she was 88 and she thought well, if he went, like, it's going to be soon for me. And almost 20 years later, she's like, my doctors don't really know what to do with me because there's nobody else really like me. There's such a small percentage. And I think that's why when we start to do things that are unusual, when you start to hit a level of success and nobody else can really relate to, and I want you to think for yourself, even if you think, well, I'm not that unusual, I'm going to guarantee that you are unusual. Bye, Braden. We'll see you next time, right? That you are unusual. And as a result, if that's the case, then the more success that you achieve, the deeper the meaning as you go on probably needs to be. Does that make sense? Because at some point, it's just like if you ask somebody who's super, super rich, right, a billionaire, Warren Buffett is going to give away the vast majority of his income when he passes. But why hasn't he retired? Because it's the thrill of the game. He loves what he does, right? He's going to continue to master what it is that he does because he does it even if he's not successful. But because he has committed to learning and improving, which is going to fall into point number 2, he shows up regardless. And as a result, the work that he does, the level of success that he has, it completely aligns to his vision, his values, and his purpose. So he couldn't imagine not doing some form of what it is that he does, which is why he's still doing it. And he doesn't do it to just keep making more money. That's part of the result because he is demonstrating his significance through the activities that he does. Does this make sense? So if you are able to do this, then you're going to keep going because there's a deeper meaning for you that achievement alone cannot provide. So in the face of challenge, in the face of uncertainty, and if right now you're going through something that's a little more uncertain, go and watch the video on my channel where I talk about uncertainty and how to overcome that. That will help you keep going. Okay. Number 2 is to be curious and open to learning. We just talked about this with the Warren Buffett example. So you would think that he feels like he knows it all, but Warren Buffett is probably the first one to tell you that he is still learning and he loves to continue to learn, which is why he goes into the office every day and does what he does, right? And so when we think about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, it was popularized by Carol Dweck. I'm going to butcher her name. Okay. Essentially, if you believe in a growth mindset, it means that you believe that you can learn and change. And if you believe in a fixed mindset, it means how you are is how you'll always be. And really, whatever you believe, you're right. So when we consider that, then can you give yourself the opportunity, especially if you are a high achiever? Because I think sometimes when we achieve and we keep achieving, then we start to question, is it just luck? And if it doesn't happen again the way that we thought it should or the way that it did before, we get down on ourselves and then we stop, which is not sustainable. And so if we allow ourselves to ebb and flow with the patterns and the seasons of life and the different things that are going on, because your success is not in a silo, meaning there are different influences that impact what you do and how you do it. So if you allow yourself the freedom and the flexibility and give yourself permission that I'm going to keep learning, and that even if the outcome, aka success, doesn't look exactly like what I'm expecting or what happened before, it's still something. It's still a move in the right direction. And if you keep moving, then over a longer period of time, which is part of what is sustainable, right? If we think about somebody who is running a sprint, a sprinter cannot run a marathon. Now they could, but the strategy is very different because a sprinter knows I'm just going to go all out and give it like 1,000%, but for a short period of time. It requires a short, focused, intense burst of energy. So your success, if you're doing something that is more like a sprint, is going to require more focus, more energy, more intention, and perhaps more focus for a short period of time. When you try to do that exact same strategy and you stretch it out over a longer time period, like a marathon takes hours, a sprint can take a matter of seconds. You cannot use the same strategy because you will burn out, right? You can't demonstrate the same types of actions that you would use in a sprint as in a marathon. A marathon requires a different level of strategy because it takes longer, and it requires you to pay attention and manage what it is that you're focused on and what it is that you're doing with the ebbs and flows and the energetic highs and lows in order to be able to maneuver so that you don't lose steam. So I believe that one of the keys to doing that is to be curious and to be open to learning. Because imagine you're building a business, you're trying to grow wealth, and there are lots of things that go on in the world that you cannot control. I cannot control, right? And as a result, if you aren't aware of what they are, and meaning like you are not paying attention and understanding, how do I want to adapt? How do I want to bounce back? How do I want to move through? How do I want to grow? How do I want to continue? How do I want to get up and just keep going in the face of something where I feel like this is really difficult? Then you're not going to sustain that level of success. And on the surface, sometimes it looks like nothing is happening at all because it is a period of rest, or it is a period of pause, or it is a period where you have to take tiny, tiny incremental movements forward because you're just worn down, right? Maybe it doesn't make sense for you to completely stop altogether, but you need to slow it down. You need to regroup and pause, reflect, refine, right? Maybe just dump some things. But if you're not open to learning, you might miss an opportunity that could come a completely different way than what you had anticipated, simply because you are now paying attention. Okay? So when you are staying stuck and in the same spot, oftentimes it's because where you actually feel stuck, right? That's the big difference here, because you could be pausing and resting and still being moving forward, and you might look like you're stuck. If you are open to learning what's going on in this opportunity, then all of that builds towards a longer term level of success. Okay. Hello, Mod.org. Nice to see you again. Okay, that's a great question. I'm going to get to point number 3, and then I'm going to come back to that. So the third thing is to take consistent actions that build over time. Now, I'm not about hustle or grind. If you haven't listened to any of my story, go back and listen to some of the videos. I don't remember if I have one specifically on here, but maybe I'll do one in an upcoming video. But the short version of this is, almost 10 years ago, I had a complete massive breakdown. And as a high achiever who actually loves doing lots of stuff, like I love having multiple projects on the go. Anybody else relate? Where the busier I am, the better I feel. There was a big period of my life where I actually had to learn how to rest, because it's not a skill that I have. I have it now, but man, was that a hard thing for me to figure out. And I was forced to do it because I wouldn't have learned it any other way, right? I was an adrenaline junkie, not by going out and doing extreme sports, but by pushing my mind, my body, my spirit, my soul. Like I pushed myself to the upper limits of what it was that I could handle. And the more things that I could do, the better it was. And I know that for me, a lot of it was because I didn't want to deal with a lot of very difficult things that I had gone through in my childhood, in my school career, in my early career, that I just ignored because it was easier and it didn't feel good to do that deep inner work. But the deep inner work was required in order for me to fully heal. So that's not to say I'm like the perfect person, because I'll be the first to tell you I'm not. I am always looking to see where could I improve and how can I help myself so that I can help other people, right? Because hurt people, and I didn't want to hurt other people in the journey called Susan's life, which then intersects with other people like Braden, who was on here early, like Lisa, like Mod.org, and anybody else who might be on here, whether live or on the replay, right? Because we all are here, but for a moment, and I don't know how long that moment is, and I am of the belief that I want to make it as good as possible for me, because let's face it, humans are selfish. And while I do that, also to help you, because I can't help you if I haven't helped myself. It's like the airplane, right? Like you have to put on your own oxygen mask so that you can put it on for other people. And so many of us, especially high achieving women, but also men, when you have a heart of service, when you are a servant leader, we are so busy trying to help other people that sometimes we forget about ourselves. And I think we have to really redefine resilience, because resilience starts with us. And the more resilient that we are, the more resilient we make our families, our communities, and the world at large, such that when there's these black swan events or other things that are terrible that are going on in the world, that as a collective whole, we are more powerful because we have better humans in it, right? We're better able to manage those challenges. So taking consistent actions feels like the slow road, because instead of biting off the entire elephant, you're gonna only take one bite. And it feels painful to do that, because it feels like, well, why couldn't I let me just eat the whole thing? Let me just do the whole project all at once. And there may be times where it makes sense for you to do that. But a champion, like we'll use Simone Biles as an example. When Simone, during not this most recent Olympics, but I think it's 2020, she walked away. And so many people thought that was a mistake, right? They agreed with it afterwards, but she kind of had to explain what was going on, because so many people would not have done and had the courage to do what she did. But that's the hallmark of a champion versus the average person. The average person didn't understand, because the average person would have just kept going and said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm going to go for it. But she knew herself enough, right? She had opened herself up to an awareness of, I know myself, I know what's going on. I don't feel good about myself. Even if I do win, I don't think that this is going to be something that is good for my overall life, not just my career, not just Simone Biles, the gymnast and the gold medalist and the champion for Team USA, but Simone Biles, the woman, the human who wants a life, who is worthy of a beautiful life that has more than just gold medals in it, and is sane and at peace and is fulfilled. And there's something about what is going on right now with how I am interacting with the world around me in this moment that is making me pause. And as a result, the actions that I need to focus on is me, not what I'm doing out on the floor, not what I'm doing on a balance beam, not what I'm doing, on the parallel bars. That can wait. And so many people thought, you're already old. You're aging out, and this could be your last chance. And yet she proved them wrong, right? And I think so many times that, especially if we are high achievers, that the naysayers, the voices of the other people who are like, go, go, go. Hello, egg. Welcome. Push, push, push. And I'm not saying there's no seasons where you're going to do that, right? Like when I gave birth to my children, I couldn't just be sitting around like, this is great being pregnant. There came a point where it's like all hands on deck, you push. Like if you don't push, you don't get a baby, right? And so there are moments in life where in order for you to get the result, you will need to push. But chances are those are going to be smaller moments, right? Not things that you would sustain over a period of time where you're having to push and push and push. You're doing that for a sprint. in the marathon of your entirety of life, business, career, wealth, relationships, health, whatever it is that you're trying to make the greatest amount of success for. So the consistent actions built over time is what stacks, right? And it's counterintuitive because we feel like, and we get these messages in our head, and we're bombarded with media that tell us that if you're not doing more, that you are not working hard enough, you are not going to get the result, that the early bird gets the worm. Like the people who are going to be getting farther ahead are the ones that are doing more. Side note, you're going to want to watch the how to work smarter, not harder video. If this point is kind of like, yeah, I get you, Susan. And this is an area where you need a little bit more support. Go and watch that video. Okay. Go and find it on my channel and that will help you. So it is counterintuitive because we are so programmed to going fast, 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 fast. But the reality is, if that we go fast without any direction, you could be spinning around in circles. You're still going fast, but you're not going to get a result, and it's certainly not going to be sustainable because you're going to burn out before you even get to the destination, sometimes the very first step. And so this is not about you taking dysfunctional, like doing for the sake of doing. This is where you are doing the intentional next right step based off of where you are. And sometimes the right step, I use that in air quotes, doesn't make any sense to anybody else. And in the Bible, it says that God will use the foolish to confound the wise. And he'll use things, and essentially what that means is that he'll use things that make no sense, but they make absolute sense. And if we are so tied and tethered to what the end goal needs to look like, and we are so desperate for that result that we are just pushing and pushing and pushing, that we don't allow the creative spirit of what it is that could birth a whole new thing and produce a whole new idea to bubble up inside of us. If we are so busy filling up all the space with just more and more and more and more and more. And that's why the key to today's video is all about sustainability. Sustainability is something that automatically has a built-in timeline, and that is long-term. It is not immediate. It is not tomorrow. Can you still see an outcome tomorrow? Sure, 100%. But the goal is not for you to achieve 1,000% every single minute of every single day over a longer period of time. Those incremental moves compound. Compounding is the eighth wonder of the world in virtually every domain, meaning like every industry. If you were to compound your effort, we mostly see it as it relates to money and wealth. But if you add it into your health, if you add it into your relationships, like how much more successful or how much more peace or how much more joy or how much more love would you be able to receive and have if instead of going like 1,000% and then pulling back to zero, because that's not sustainable, right? That you just focus on incremental, maybe it's 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% increase every day. And it feels boring. It feels very slow, but slow and steady does win the race, right? And if your life is the race, then we want to make sure that you're going to be here for the long haul and achieve as much success as you desire without burning out and petering out halfway through or a quarter of the way through. Because I'm going to tell you, there are a lot of people right now who are having a quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, and then like later on in life when they are thinking about what do I do when I'm retired, or what do I do once my children are out of the house, maybe my grandchildren are out of the house, and now I don't really know what to do with all this spare time. So really thinking thoughtfully about these major milestones in your life and being able to incorporate that as you go along this journey so that your success is something that evolves with you, gets redefined with you, and that it is 100% sustainable, not just today, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years from now. Make sense? Okay. I'm just looking at my notes here. Okay, so let's questions, and I apologize because if I look a little squinty, it's because my eyes are dry and I have contacts on. Hello, Linda. Hello, hello. Egg, do you, do you eat my family and friends who are eggs? You probably don't want me to answer that question. So I plead. Okay, so Maud Org is saying, hi, Susan, what would you do to recover from a burnout that isn't budging? So, so for me, I would always go to God first. Now, I am a woman of faith. I have a very, very deep relationship with God. And regardless of what your belief system is, right? Because I believe, and you can believe otherwise, but I believe that God transcends religion. And so that means that whether it's yourself inside, so number one, Maud Org, can you answer me, is your burnout, what are your symptoms, if you feel comfortable, right? Hello, Braden. Of course I remember you. You were just on here. So let me know if you're still on here, Mod.org, what kind of symptoms, and then I can narrow my focus, right? When I had burnout, it was physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, and spiritual pain. And at the beginning, I couldn't deal with all of it. And so what I want you to think about is your system is remarkable. You are created to heal. And as a result, there are keys within you that if you are patient and you are gentle with the process and you trust fully in you and your ability, coupled with divine help and providence, that there are going to be things that are laid out in your path. And that might be why we met, because I don't know how we met other than I showed up somehow, somewhere on one of my videos, because I don't know that we know each other from anywhere else, right? And so when you think about these, because that was point number 2 where I had described sustainable success. Sustainable success is really about being open to learning and allowing opportunities that show up to show up. And then when you see them, to go, how can I use this, right? How can this help me? And by asking thoughtful questions, because the quality of our life is determined by the quality of the questions that we ask. And sometimes we just don't know the type of questions that we should ask in order to get the answers that we want. And then we get frustrated and then we burn up a lot of energy. And so when we think about this, because my healing immediately started with my physical self, right? And if you have physical burnout, breakdown, pain, a great book to read, and I can link it up in the description afterwards, is The Body Keeps the Score. Your body will keep score of every single thing that you have gone through, and also your entire bloodline, like your mom and dad, your great, grandma and grandpa, your great, 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 like all the way up the line. It's now proven through science called epigenetics. And how these things trigger is still yet unknown. But what science has proven is that just because you have the gene, let's say for cancer, and it runs in your family, they can explain why now I'm going to be very mindful of how I speak this out, that somebody else in your family may have gotten cancer having the same gene within them, but you also have the same gene, but never get cancer, right? So that's the science of epigenetics. So when we think about it from that perspective, what that tells me is that there is something that we have complete access to that will influence whether or not some of these things can manifest. Now, I'm going to say from my belief system, do I wish that I could have learned a lesson about what it is to be healthy in a different way? Yes. But could I have learned it differently? No. I had 3 car accidents, and it was only with the third one, and after having 2 babies and going through that whole complete collapse, that I finally saw how precious life is. right? Like it didn't clue in for me. And so as I've gone through now from 2011 was the car accident, 2015 was a complete breakdown. So over the last almost 9 years, that healing has been a journey, layer by layer by layer. And now what that means is that when I get triggered, when something happens, I bounce back faster. Okay. Does it mean that I am indestructible? No, not at all. Especially because I'm also now aging, right? I am almost 10 years older than when this was happening. My energy level, my focus level, my hormone levels, like there's a lot of things that have evolved and shifted and changed within the fabric of me as a human, like just how my cells are being activated. Okay. So Moderer says, I often feel stuck. Okay. Okay. I often feel stuck. Try to assess my situation, but I feel it's out of my control. Have to wait for something to change. Okay. It doesn't happen always, but happens. So what I want you to answer, and you don't have to answer it publicly if you don't feel comfortable doing so, but are there triggers? For me, I had food triggers. I had human triggers. My family, which included my kids, were my main triggers. Um, as you can imagine, that was really tough because it wasn't like I could go and hide out in a commune for like a period of time while I had the benefit and the privilege of healing. I still had to operate in the real life world of interacting with the people who meant the world to me. They still do, but they were very much a hindrance to my healing. Like I just want to say, my kids triggered me. My kids made my pain worse. And so I had to learn how to adopt and adapt with real life happening right then and there. And that means that we can't always identify or remove ourselves from the things that are happening that are causing the pain, causing the breakdown, causing the mental anguish and the situations, right? What we need to learn is coping strategies that are healthy and that are supportive in order to help us to move through it such that you don't slide backwards. So that was my goal. So maybe right now your goal isn't, I am going to completely heal from burnout, because that wasn't my goal when I first started. My goal was, can I just stop having pain? Can I stop feeling worse so that I wasn't flying backwards? Can I just at least stay the same? And so right now, what I would identify is, what are my triggers? And that takes a little bit of work. And it's not sexy and it's not fun. It's not fun to track your time and your activity and how you feel. Oh, I wish I had it here, but it's up back in my house. So what I tracked were the things that I knew I was concerned with. So for me, it was, what's my level of pain? And so maybe for you, that's something that you can start with, is when you get up or throughout the day, just monitor, what is your level of pain on a scale of 1 to 10, right? And if we equate this back to success, how do you feel about your success? Because I think sometimes when we're trying to achieve sustainable success, we have certain feelings and thoughts around what that looks like or feels like or is like when we're going through the journey. So pain levels 1 through 10, and I would document it because you're going to forget. And our brains do a great job of catastrophizing, which means that when bad things happen, it feels worse. And you forget about the good days. You forget about the times where I like this was an okay day. And then think about the things that make your days better. What are the days when you are able to achieve more or accomplish more, or just not accomplish less? Because maybe that's where you need to be, right? Before you can swing upwards, that you need to just get to the point where you are not sliding backwards, that you're not continuing to burn out. Because sometimes that's what happens when you are a high achiever and you're trying to go up and up and up and up. Because that's what happened when I was trying to do this. So maybe tomorrow or the next day, I will share a little bit more about my journey of healing, like what that progress looked like and why it was so challenging, because I didn't want to heal. I wanted to heal, but I didn't want to heal. I wanted to heal, but I wanted it to be instant. And so I really struggled. I really struggled with trying to balance off, and it didn't work so well for me. Not for the first 6 months or so. I kept wanting to do more, and the doing was making it worse. And so this is where you can't not do stuff, but you also can't do the same stuff when you are in a burnout situation. So tomorrow, maybe I will talk about burnout, if that's helpful. Okay. Modorg says, emails, small tasks, these were my triggers. So I would look at why. Are there specific emails? Are there specific small tasks, right? What is it about those particular tasks that made it worse, right? So like, did it trigger certain emotions? Did it trigger certain memories? Did it trigger certain thoughts? When we are trying to achieve and accomplish more and we get in our own way, there's often loops that we get stuck in. So Mod.org, it sounds like there's a loop and you have to break the pattern. And just by creating awareness to it, just by you saying, here's what's happening, and then you immediately create distance, you can break the pattern. And it is, at first, doesn't feel like it's doing much at all. And because all it's doing is it's creating space, it's creating a gap, right? It's basically creating a breath. And so if you can do that consistently enough, the gap creates more peace. And then you can start to identify, now, how can I move forward? Because right now, the emotions and all of that might be entangled. Lord, we just bind that right now. In the name of Jesus. If I understand what triggers are, I mean. So let's define triggers. A trigger is something that if you are, how do I want to explain this? Hello, Amir. Thanks for joining. I don't know if you're still on here. I don't know what I'm right about, but I appreciate you saying that. So a trigger is something that I want you to think about that word logistically, right? So I'm going to be very mindful of my words because I know sometimes there's like censorship and because my audience are a lot of parents, right? You may or may not be a parent, but most of my content is such that you could listen to it with your kids around and not worry about having to censor. So I am very mindful of what I talk about and how I provide examples. So if you think about the word trigger, what is it usually in relation to? Okay. So when you think about it from that perspective, what happens when a trigger is pulled? What happens when something is triggered? Something else happens, right? There's a series of dominoes that happen. And so that is what triggers. So if you have a trigger, so I'll give you an example of me. So let's use this for something that is positive. Okay, and then you can relate it to something that might not be less positive. So when I want to change behaviors, I use habit stacking, which I didn't come up with. I don't even know who came up with it. But the trigger would be, I already have a habit. Let's say it's brushing my teeth. And so if I want to add in a new habit, like doing affirmations, I might connect it to the trigger of I'm brushing my teeth. So that trigger of I'm brushing my teeth is going to remind me, and maybe I put a Post-it up, right, that says, brush your teeth, affirmations. Because that way, when I brush my teeth, that immediately is going to trigger me into, I'm going to do my affirmations. Now on the flip side, because that's a positive reinforcement or trigger, you could also have this on the negative side, where if I'm reading this correctly for you, then if you are doing emails or small tasks, it's going to trigger you into burnout symptoms. Things where you're going to spiral and go down, right? Either negative thinking or you're going to be wound up and your nervous system is going to go on hyperdrive and you're going to get all the cortisol and all of these different types of hormones and reactions that are flooding your system and going to cause an intense chemical reaction in your body. And as a result, your system is going to be overloaded. So when we think about it from that perspective, then, right? Then I want you to just identify for yourself why. That's number one is why, what's going on and what's happening. What do you notice in your body? Because again, we're creating space. And then the other piece is, what are you making that mean? And how does this actually feel inside of you, right? And I'm talking about beyond the actual chemical reaction. It is because for a lot of us, I know this is going to sound weird, but we get addicted to it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a good or bad necessarily. It's just going to know that that's something that we have survived. And so if we survived it once, we can survive it again. So if it happens again, that's much more comfortable for us than going through something that we don't know what the outcome is, even if it's a positive thing, because we're not sure that we'll survive that thing. And so as a result, if you notice that you are finding yourself in these loops and actually putting yourself in situations where that loop occurs again and again, it is your brain playing a trick on you. And this is on the flip side, where we get addicted to success because, and that can cause burnout because we know that I can survive this. And as we keep doing more and more and more and more, it becomes very dysfunctional for the same exact reason, because our brain goes, way to go. You survived. We're still alive. And so you can do more of this, because even though you might not enjoy it, you will make it through. You'll still survive. And so it'll keep doing that to the point where you're on the verge of, I don't know if I can make this, because your brain literally is just looking for patterns and saying, here is what we've done before, and we are still here, so we're going to just keep doing the same thing as before, right? And that's why even the tips that I gave today, the 3 things that we discussed around sustainable success, when we think about it in the context of burnout, it still applies, because your brain has gotten stuck in a loop, and then it's trying to process all of these different chemical reactions, emotional things that have gone out, the mental burden, and yes, even like the disconnect between your spirit, your soul, and your body, and that clash that I believe, now somebody else can define it differently, but here on my channel, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. And so for me, I 100% based off of my experience believe that a lot of burnout comes from disconnection. That was my example. And we'll talk about this more tomorrow when I go into my story a little bit further. So I'm going to encourage you, Modorg, and anybody else who's watching this live or on the replay, look at what areas of your life are you disconnected from? What parts of you do you feel disconnected from? What parts of your life do you feel are spinning out of control? Right? Because successful people often are the ones who on the surface feel like I don't have my ish together, and on paper it looks perfect, and I feel guilty because something's wrong and nobody else quite understands why, because I look like I have all my ish together and I can't explain it because I don't know what's going on. And so I feel a little crazy, and I don't know how to ask for help because I don't know what kind of help to ask for. If that describes you, because that was me. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. But I'm here as a beacon, as just an example of, hopefully you're not alone. If any of that resonates with you, and you don't need to let me know if it does, right? Because I know that we're all going through our own journey. But if you do feel like sharing, please feel free to do so. Because I think, again, we're more similar than we're different. And too much of the world at large is sending out messages in order to create even more disconnection, to fracture unity, to create dissension, to create war with our words, to make us pit against each other, instead of helping us to remember that we are the fabric of humanity, and that when we look at, and today's video about sustainable success, the reason why I chose those words specifically, and I was, going to talk about the science behind it, which I did inadvertently or hidden amongst that, is because when you are highly driven and motivated, that success can sometimes become an idol upon which we like place all of our cards. And it's a slippery slope, because what happens when you can no longer achieve the level of success that you desire, right? What happens then? What happens when you are in a position where you are so depleted and so burnt out and so not yourself that you don't know who you are anymore and how you can operate in the world and still add value? And I hope that you know through the course of all these videos that I've been doing that even if you did nothing else but just wake up today, that you are inherently valuable and worthy, and that the world is a better place because you're in it. And when you're aligned, and that's why number one that we talked about is aligning your values, your vision, and your purpose, right? Because when you do that, then you will be able to move through with more ease, more grace, more fulfillment, and more peace. And that will automatically bring more joy. Does that mean that your life is not going to have its ups and downs? No, not at all, because we're still human, right? But at the same time, you are here for a purpose, on purpose, and your success is already inevitable. And the more that you're able to get yourself back on path, the easier it will flow. I hope that makes sense. Mod.org, you're welcome. I hope that it was helpful for you. It was a great question, and it will help me to talk about tomorrow's topic, right? But I'm hopeful that regardless of where you are in your journey, because I know that for all of us, we are here to serve a bigger mission and purpose than just us alone. And that means that you need to have direction and clarity in what you want to accomplish, right? So today was all about sustainable success. You have to define success according to what it is that you actually desire, not what somebody else wants, and to think about what that looks like over the long term. We're not talking about a day or a week or a month or even a year. We're talking about like 5, 10 years or decades, your entire lifetime. And the level of success that you can achieve is going to change. It's going to reflect where you are in your life. It's going to reflect where you are in the world. And it's going to reflect the seasons of what it is that you're experiencing. And so if we don't give ourselves an opportunity to pause and to look at, is this still what I want? And is this the way that I want it? Then we might be running a race that we never wanted to enter in the first place. And oftentimes, especially with high achievers, we get addicted to that level of success, that it becomes a hallmark of our identity that we hang our hat on. And then it becomes very difficult to break that chain because there's a lot of ego involved. There's a lot of other impact involved. And it becomes difficult to untangle from that and extricate ourselves from that in a way that still creates fulfillment, so that it's not just tick, 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 tick. Make sense? Yeah? Okay? It was super helpful. I'm so glad. Okay, so if there are any other questions, please let me know below. I'll pause for a couple minutes here because I'm just going to double check the comments. And let me just see. I don't think so. So every day we are going live on this channel. We've been doing this for 30 days. I don't know what day we're on now. And so if you have ideas for upcoming topics. If you have questions that I can answer in more detail, this one may have been one that would have been better served as a separate topic, but maybe we will just pull it out and do it again. But for sure, tomorrow I'll be talking a little bit more about my story. So it is kind of a follow-on to burnout, like how to deal with burnout, how to identify symptoms of burnout. And I'm just going to be speaking from my own example. So if that's helpful for you, you're going to want to watch tomorrow's topic, tomorrow's video. And if there's some way that I can help you, there's a few different things here in the description box. So please feel free to go ahead and look at those and see if they are helpful for you in your business or life journey. And if you want access to the vision workshop, which we finished on Monday, it has transformed people's lives. So if you want to know and have a vision, excuse me, that will inspire you, then I'm going to add the description in the box below for you. Through the holidays, you're going to be able to still get it for the exact same investment as we did before we did it live. So you're going to get access to that, and you're still going to get access to the bonus workshop while it's still available. So if the link takes you to the bundle for $33, then you're in luck. You have access to it. And if you've passed it, excuse me, because the price will be brought up to $97 at some point, then that's the price. So either way, the value is there, and it has transformed people's lives. It has allowed some people to finally articulate the vision that they've been kind of waiting their whole life for. That's not my words. That is direct from somebody who actually attended and said, this was an answer to a prayer. This was exactly what I was looking for. This has been super helpful, and it has literally changed my life. And so if this is something that you need, then feel free to grab that as well. So we will talk to you again tomorrow, and I hope you have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.